We got to talk here on the College Football Apostles today because Ryan Day just got a new contract, highest paid coach in college football. But who was Ohio State really bidding against? The SEC is continually trying to make the college football playoff and their path just a little bit easier. Jalen Milroe says, don't even ask me about playing running back in the NFL because it ain't happening, boss. TC Lewis says that his son, Julian Lewis, is one of the most heavily scrutinized recruits of all time. And I can't really disagree with him. And Brian Kelly is in hot water and has to defend himself. Do you believe him? Is the question. That and so much more here on the College Football Apostles. Make sure that you like, subscribe, get notifications, and tell a friend about the show. Let's get to it. All right, so we're gonna start with Ryan Day. And y'all make sure y'all hop in the comments. Tell me what y'all think. So Ryan Day just got a new 7-year, $12.5 million per year contract from Ohio State after he won a national championship. And this is no disparagement upon Ryan Day, the actual person, Ryan Day, the coach, none of that. But this makes zero sense to me. Ryan Day loves Ohio State. Ryan Day is not leaving Ohio State. This is the same man that people were considering firing 2 months ago, Ralph. They wanted him fired for 2 months and maybe a year prior to that. But now he's won a national championship, and now all of a sudden it's, hey, let's give him a new 7-year, $12.5 million contract. Yeah. I'm like, you're bidding against yourself. How does this make any sense, Ralph?
Yeah, that's the whole part of it is you have obligated your institution to a buyout that's going to be north of $70 million when you were negotiating against absolutely no one on the heels of something you pointed out on your Unafraid show daily live on Tuesday, which is teams don't often follow up losing their coordinators with success. And almost everybody who wins national championships loses their coordinators. So
Yep.
a perfect example would be Dabo Swinney, 6 straight college football playoff semifinals when he had his co-offensive coordinators with him, and none since they both left.
Yep.
And so, could Ohio State, who hadn't won a national championship in 10 years prior to this, be in trouble now that they've lost their defensive coordinator to Penn State and their offensive coordinator to the Las Vegas Raiders?
And they lost their O-line coach as well.
Yeah, that's tough. And so, but if you possess the belief that you're going to be able to have the financial means to build this roster year over year, and you think the best person to deal with all those financiers is Ryan Day, then he's going to earn this contract in spades.
Well, here
But
here's the thing I don't understand, Ralph, is after all of these institutions see these buyout situations, look at what happened over at Florida State with Mike Norvell. He got an extension. He wasn't going to get the Alabama job, but they gave him an extension anyway. And then they had a terrible season, and now they're in a buyout situation. Now, on one hand, I don't mind it because I do think that teams and schools overreact a little too quickly sometimes, and this marries them to their coaches to give them a good enough runway, right? But it also incentive because the contracts are pretty much fully guaranteed, it also incentivizes that if you get sick and tired of something, if you get sick and tired of the administration, and for all the people who are like, listen, let's stop the handouts in this country. Let's stop people from not working for their keep, letting them just suck on the teats of the institutions and the government and everything else. How are they okay with this, Ralph?
that, I mean, because
Is it not the same thing?
I don't know. I mean, it's he's doing his job, so
Yeah,
it's
but I'm
not.
saying if he decides that if he wants to pull a Jimbo Fisher and mail it in,
Then it comes down to the thing that you often say about player talent. Then I guess what you paid for is the success you already had. I guess the bulk of this contract is going to be justified by past value because there is nothing to stop a coach. I mean, Ed Orgeron's quote's going to live in infamy. That when they said we're going to pay you your buyout, he was like, "Cool."
which
And that, I mean, I
which
was in
door
the
you
same
want me
building.
out of, and how and what time you want me out of there.
I was in the same building
And
as
that was
Jimbo
only like
Fisher.
$20 million, or a little under $20 million. Imagine if it was $76 million.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is I was just at the Peach Bowl, where Jimbo Fisher was down on the field being inducted into the college or into the Peach Bowl Hall of Fame, and the crowd was full of Texas fans. So of course they're all going to boo Jimbo Fisher for his time at their rival
They shouldn't
Texas
be booing
A&M.
him for that.
But he had the biggest smile on his face the whole time. I'm saying he looks rested, he looks relaxed, he looks like he's getting all his vitamins. He looks like he sleeps on a mattress. He didn't have a single muscle cramp. He looks like his golf swing's probably better than ever. He is enjoying life right now. And so, the stresses of being a college football head coach, if at any time you could say, yeah, pull the ripcord, hand me 8 figures, and let me walk off into the sunset, it gets really, really hard, I think, maybe to stay motivated because that's a lot of money. And so the next time that Ryan Day loses to Michigan and all the fans are wanting to harass his kids and drive past his house laying on the horn and everything like that, it's going to be in the back of his mind that he could just leave
Yeah.
and get, and his grandkids could never want for anything. And so, or he could buy the house of the people who are harassing him and just have it
And
leveled.
evict them, or buy, buy an equity stake in the company so they can fire him.
Yeah, I mean, he could become one of Ohio State's biggest boosters and steer things however he wants. Like he's the kind of money he's got now is the kind of money you can do a whole lot with. So it'll just be interested to see if they can keep him motivated because obviously giving somebody this type of money when one of the major prerequisites of having this job is beating Michigan and that hadn't happened since COVID, that you better hope that starts happening is all I'm saying. It also makes me wonder what Sharon Moore is getting paid if the school that's beating Ryan Day is paying their head coach $12.5 million a year.
Yep. That is a good dude. That's a good point. So yeah, these coaching contracts, I thought that with the advent of revenue sharing and all of that, and coaches not getting fired as much, I thought that you would have schools push back on just the amount that coaches are making. Don't look like we're gonna be in that saga, buddy. But speaking of
So the
coaches,
average salary, I just wanted to point out real quick, in Columbus, Ohio, is about $65,000 per year.
he makes that a
Um,
day.
Ryan Day makes more than that every 2 days. Ryan Day is going to make $34,000 a day. So I make your
Hey,
salary in
you
two
better.
days
Hey, do
is going to
do
be
you
the
know
thing
what?
floating
That
in the
new
back of his
contract
head.
is gonna bring a lot of pressure, though, buddy. A lot of pressure because, like we told y'all, the idea that you're gonna lose both your coordinators and then have an up year, that does not happen. Um, that means that they're probably a 10-win team. That's what that means. They may make the college football playoff, but winning a back-to-back national championship ain't happening. Um, Speaking of coaches getting paid a lot of money, you got Brian Kelly. And this one was very interesting because on Good Morning America, Brian Kelly yesterday, he responded to the Good Morning America interview about his former player, Greg Brooks Jr., who ended up with a brain tumor and ended up having to have surgery. And the kid is not right. He's in a wheelchair now. Like he speaks differently, his face is disfigured, all sorts of things. And the allegations are that LSU, that the person that LSU, that there was some mishandling of his medical, that the doctor who did it, that he was not qualified to do that type of surgery. Obviously, he was a qualified surgeon, but not to do that level of surgery. And they levied heavy allegations against Brian Kelly that he has not checked up on the kid with what the expectations that the family has had and all sorts of stuff. So now the family's suing. And then Brian Kelly went up there and he was like, I need to defend myself. The thing that really rubbed me the wrong way. And I hated Brian Kelly's response to this, Ralph, because it felt like it left it feeling like he was trying to defend himself, even though he talked about the kid some. It just
Yeah.
did, it felt like it was more about him and defending his own reputation than the empathy for the situation that Brooks is going through, because Brian Kelly wants to save face for recruits and, you know, his public image.
Well, let me read Brian Kelly's statement because I think the comment that really riled Brian Kelly up was Greg Brooks Sr. saying, "My son almost lost his life, coach. Where were you? Forget about football. Pick up the phone and say you love the kid." So the accusation was essentially like once the surgery was had, Greg Brooks Jr. did not hear from Brian Kelly. And his recovery has been an uphill battle because they believe the doctor who performed the surgery wasn't qualified, messed up, and caused his recovery to be a lot longer of a road. He's wheelchair bound. Greg Brooks Jr. has had to relearn how to talk. So pretty serious stuff. And this is Brian Kelly's response. He said, "You can question me as a football coach. You can question me with things we do on the field, but off the field, as a parent, a husband, as someone who is actively involved in every community that I've been involved with, this is where I draw the line for me." That comment struck a nerve with me. It hit my heart. I'm in this business for our players, and it rattled me that somebody could possibly be so factually incorrect in stating that I was not part of Greg Brooks Jr.'s care and support. The support was the entire university and entire community. I needed to make sure that record was clear. There's some issues, I think, with this statement that you can probably point out.
Yes, very much so. It you know how the young kids now, they say it gives you the ick. It gave me the ick because
What to be fair, so Brian Kelly is saying that someone from his staff
yes,
that Brian Kelly was intentional about having someone from his staff
be there
around to
every,
kind
yeah, yeah. He
of
said he said somebody was there every day. And do I think that he checked on him at some point in time? Probably early on. But sometimes people, they get caught up in the stuff. Like as a parent, you want to feel like that your coach, that it's bigger than football for him and that he cares, right? So Brian Kelly can't on one hand say, I do this for the kids. When you left Notre Dame, not worried about the kids. You left Notre Dame to pursue your own personal interests. You had one of the top college football jobs in the nation, but you didn't feel like you could win a national championship there. So, and I'm not even begrudging him for that, because everybody gets to live where they want to live, have the economic stability that they want, what all those things. But it just rings a little hollow when you I'm here for the kids, when no, you're actually here for yourself, and the kids benefit on some level from that. And then you add in the fake accent, you add in the, like, it just doesn't, bro, it regardless of the level of, even if the truth is somewhere in between what Greg Brooks Sr. is saying and what Brian Kelly is saying, it still to me doesn't feel like Brian Kelly, like, when you hear him talk, when I hear other things that other people have said about it, just doesn't feel as like he loves the kids on the level that maybe, let's say, a Deion Sanders does, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean,
Because it feels like that Deion really loves his players that are there. And you can say that about a whole host of other coaches too. But I'm just using him as a prime example.
right. And so with Brian Kelly, what's interesting about his response to this is it's 15 years later, and it's markedly different than
Oh, then
when
when the kid
he
fell
had
off the
yeah.
yeah, oh my God, I forgot
So
about that at
Declan,
Notre Dame. So in case
yeah,
anybody doesn't remember, they were practicing, it was windy conditions, and
November 2010.
yeah, so teams always have these cranes that go up and they film practice from the cranes. Super windy. Either the kid fell off the crane or the crane blew over. One of the two. Kid dies. Take it away.
So yeah, Declan Sullivan, student, passed away. Brian Kelly didn't say anything for a few days, and then he gave a post practice um, update 3 days later, in late October of 2010. Um, and this was like, I said November, but it was late October. Gave an update, and he's like, "Yeah, we had a good practice today. Got to avoid distractions, all that stuff." Didn't mention the kid, and then from that point on, there was a lot of pushback to Brian Kelly that basically said that you know eh, he's focused on the outcome, and that's it. And it gave Brian Kelly this reputation of being just ruthless, right? Like 3 days after somebody passes away trying to film one of his practices, he's out there saying, yeah, we got to stay focused through weather conditions and stuff like
Well, the
that.
fact that
So
you didn't even mention it, like that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, people won't remember what you said, they won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And for some reason, in that moment, so regardless of, like, no judgment on Brian Kelly, but for some reason, there's something that he's doing that he has to recognize that it didn't feel like he cared enough in that situation. And to the Brooks family, it hasn't felt like he cared enough in the situation. So, and you don't want anybody to pretend that they care, but there is something that he has to recognize within himself, that this is how he's making other people feel, and do some soul searching and figure out how to change, because that's not going to land you the recruits that you want. It's not going to give you the connections that you want in terms of with your players and coaching staffs and everything in between. So the question is, Ralph, do you believe that this will impact Brian Kelly's recruiting and LSU's football? And do you believe that that's why he made the statement?
I'm interested in why he actually felt the nerve to respond. It's a pretty serious accusation. The news cycle probably would have washed it out
Yep.
with other things happening. Potentially, it could have been handled privately with a conversation with Greg Brooks Sr., because probably the best thing for the situation would be to Greg Brooks Sr. to come out and be like, I was emotional, upon further review. I had a conversation with Brian Kelly. Turns out he was getting updates from somebody he had their daily, maybe he didn't want to interfere in the process. If there
You
is a
got to
side
show
to
up, bro.
explain,
You got to show up.
yeah, yeah, but at least something from Greg Brooks Sr. would be better than getting us into an immediate he said, she said.
Yeah.
But here's what it reminds me of. Here's what it reminds me of. Do you remember Kanye West standing by Mike Myers after Hurricane Katrina
Yeah.
doing a benefit
George Bush
commercial?
hates black people.
He said George Bush doesn't care about black people,
Yes,
right?
yes, there we go.
George Bush has talked about that being the thing, like the moment in his presidency that hurt his feelings the most, right? And the
Yep.
response from George W. Bush kind of rub people the wrong way. Be like, oh, your feelings were hurt. What do you think Kanye? Who do you think Kanye was speaking for?
Yes.
Right, and that's what it reminds me of is Brian Kelly coming out and being like, hey, you can say whatever you want about the way that I coach on the football field, but the kid with brain damage that I didn't visit, that's where I draw the line. And it's like, okay, well, how about we focus on the kid with brain damage that you didn't visit? Because nowhere in this statement are you saying that you did show up. And
Yeah.
the criticism was that you didn't call him or that you weren't there. That was the criticism. You
Yeah.
weren't there. Doesn't matter what else
See,
you did. That's the thing that hurt their feelings. He is a former player of
and
yours.
if you go
And a
to
response like this, George, just to end it, a response like this goes a long way to showing that you don't view him as one of yours anymore. Because otherwise, you got to go reconcile.
yep, that's that right there. Well, it's a lawsuit going on. So what? If this is about the humans, right? Then yes, the lawsuit should not matter in terms of you saying, "Hey, yo, like, let me." You don't have to go in there and say, "Man, I'm sorry I didn't show up enough," blah blah blah, because that can be used. Like, just, man, I'm sorry that you feel like this. I'm here for you. All right. So next up, TC Lewis, Julian Lewis's dad, Juju Lewis, who has been a very prominent recruit for what, the last 3 years, Ralph? Like
Oh yeah.
since his freshman year in high school, he has been looked at as the future. And he didn't end up as the number one quarterback in the nation. People thought he would, but he's played from the time he was a freshman, thrown for umpteen yards, like looks good, everything else. So his dad said that he's one of the more scrutinized recruits in recent memory. I 100% agree with that, Ralph. And
Okay.
this is this reminds me of when players who are fantastic, right? And they come back for their sophomore, junior year because they got to be 3 years removed from their high school graduating class. Let's take Jeremiah Smith, for example. In 2 years, when he's draft eligible, people have been saying now he would be the number one overall pick. The next year, they're going to find more holes in his game, stuff he needs to work on. Junior year, when it's time to go to the draft, and he'll still be a top 10 prospect. It'll be, here's some things we don't necessarily like about him, blah, blah, blah. But then, guy who flies on the radar for 1 year. Oh my gosh, he's the next hottest thing. We're so juiced. We're so excited about him. So the longer that you're on the scene, the more data there is on you, the more critical that people are going to be of you because they've seen the greatness, they got excited. So then it's the tear down process. And that's why I believe that his dad is right because we weren't, well, we as a public weren't trying to tear down, you know, uh, Jaron Satu Kiwi Satu Patelli, or excuse me, I screwed up the kid's name, um, from Hawaii who went to Oregon and then went to Cal. We weren't tearing him down because he came on the scene late. That's the point.
Yeah, I don't I don't necessarily disagree with the idea that he is highly scrutinized. Whether he's one of the most scrutinized, that really depends on what TC Lewis has been paying attention to. Um, because I think it comes back to you being right. Once you determine that somebody is a high level quarterback, right? That then if it happens early enough, you start to really pick them apart. And sometimes that rating goes up and sometimes that rating goes down. Right. So a guy like Hussein Longstreet, who replaced Julian Lewis as the USC commit at quarterback, right?
Yep.
He's somebody who floated around being ranked 50th in the country by 247 to starting about at this time last year, climbing up the rankings to jumping into 5-star status and finishing as the last ranked 5-star um, in the class of 2025. What's interesting about Husan Longstreet and Julian Lewis is they are also the only two quarterbacks in the top 15 in the country, according to most, on three rivals 247 that are under 6'2". So then you have that additional scrutiny of your size comes into play.
Yeah.
And so with Julian Lewis, he finished as far as 247 goes as the number 10 quarterback in the country, but just in 2024, in a 1 year period, he went from being the 14th ranked prospect in America to the 126th ranked prospect in America. So TC Lewis saw his son drop over 100 spots um, just in the course of only his senior season of
Same
high
thing
school
happened
football.
to Achilles Smith Jr. Same thing happened to a few quarterbacks where you're like, oh wow, what? Okay, what? That was an interesting, evaluation, and I think that brings into the question the evaluations just to begin with, right? And this is where people have problems and grow frustrated on some level with some of the rankings because there does I I okay, so in different pockets of the country, there are more evaluators. Like for instance, on the West Coast, there are less people for on 3 247 rivals who are evaluating talent on the West Coast than there are people who are doing it on the in the South. Would you say that that's a fair statement?
I do agree with that, but it's also depends on the recruiting service. So I work with a Rivals affiliate. Rivals, I think, does a really good job in the Southeast. The reason I use 247 for Juju Lewis is because 247 has a much larger presence on the West Coast,
Yes.
which means the guys who are seeing Lewis the most are the ones who dropped him the most.
Mm. Ooh.
And what's crazy about that? No, I'm sorry. Julian Lewis is an East Coast based quarterback.
Yeah.
So it's the opposite of what I just said. The 247 probably sees him the least, they dropped him the most. So that you don't have to put as much stock into that, I guess, if you're TC Lewis. But if you look at the rivals ranking where they have a heavier presence in the Southeast, he finished as a 5-star. So they believe he's the number 3 quarterback in the country. They believe he's a 5-star. They believe he'll eventually be a first round pick. And his national ranking did drop to number 10 in the country overall, but there's a much less of a problem if you're Juju Lewis when you see rivals drop you from the number 1 quarterback in the country to the number 3 quarterback in the country, while over on the other side you go from the number 14 player in the country to the number 126 player in the country. And the wildest thing about that, George, is nobody has had more continuity in their high school career than Juju Lewis. He had 48 touchdown passes as a sophomore,
Yep.
48 as a junior, 48 as a senior.
Yes. Yes. So it's not like his play dropped off. It's the
No,
excitement.
he was the most consistent all throughout high school in Carrollton, Georgia.
Yeah, it's the excitement of the other players. That's the thing about it, is that it's the excitement of seeing the other players and you're like, oh man, this kid's so good. And the kid that you've seen the most, you're like, I don't know, he's a little shorter, not sure, blah blah blah. It's a perpetual cycle that goes on. But let's talk about these recruiting rankings because the final recruiting rankings are out because National Signing Day, which was probably the most uneventful national signing day that we've ever had. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, this is part of my job, and I almost forgot that yesterday
Yeah.
that yesterday through like Sunday is the second signing day. So you're seeing teams announce players, and I was like, oh yeah. And a lot of them are
Dude,
the
I
smaller
I
school.
saw it was funny because Sierra Canyon had a kicker that we know Ashton Zamati, who's one of my kids' friends. He just signed to go to UCLA, but he's been committed to UCLA. And it was just funny because I was like, why did he just sign? I was like, oh my God, it's National Signing Day. And it was just very interesting to me because this has changed so much. And the coaches, and like, I want there to be some pomp and circumstance surrounding National Signing Day again, whether it's in the first window, second window. And I know that you can't do it in the second window anymore because kids like my kid check in January. So maybe we need to change the pomp and circumstance surrounding National Signing Day to the first window and then leave our second window as, you know, as not the expectation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I've got some recruiting tidbits for you that I just want your reaction to
Okay.
because we're in a brand new world of recruiting, right?
Yes.
High school doesn't matter as much anymore because
Oh,
of the transfer
oh,
portal.
speaking of that, let me tell you. So On3 had to come up with a new way to even track these recruits, right? Because
Okay.
so they will either have, when they commit, the thing goes big and everything, and then it says committed, and then it says signed, right? And then eventually it'll say enrolled. Once they're enrolled. And wait, is Bryce Underwood not checking in early at Michigan? Anyways, so for Jaren Kiwi Sagapuatelli, the quarterback, short-term signee. That's what it says now. So it
Oh,
has
and
Oregon to Cal. It says short-term signee. I thought that was funny. I was like, oh wow, they had to
that is
create a,
funny.
like, the world is constantly evolving, so they had to create a new box inside of their box, a new option in there.
Well, speaking of evolving, it used to be there was a cap of 25 total recruits between the transfer portal and high school that you could bring in every year. Those caps have been removed. You technically could turn your entire roster over in one season. You could get 80 signees if you wanted to.
You can get 105
Um,
if you want to, because remember, the new scholarship limits are going to be 105. But oh God, that deep dives into the settlement and all of that stuff, which I don't even think is going to get approved. But that's a whole nother conversation.
So, but that brings me to this: four teams signed 28 or more high school players in this signing class. Three teams signed 30 plus, and one team signed 35 high school kids.
What? So I'm actually not mad at that because you should be signing a lot of, like, you need to build your roster from the high school players. So you got so I just found one. You got Syracuse, 35 commits.
Syracuse. That's it. I was going to have you guess who it was that went above and beyond. Syracuse's high school class is 35 deep and has like seven cornerbacks.
Hey, he's like, one of them gonna turn, like two of them gonna turn out to be good.
Yeah, no,
West Vir- yep,
Fran Brown went crazy in this class.
West Virginia went crazy in the class, 31.
Yes, and they needed to. Got Rich Rod coming in, and um, and so they're the only one over 28 that has a first year coach. TCU is the other one that went over
Mm-mm.
30, which I thought was very
You got
interesting.
you got one more. You forgot. There's a new coach at Washington State,
Washington State went over 30 signees.
35. But they absolutely needed 35 signees because their whole roster got gutted. So they are they're the farm system team, unfortunately, for a lot of programs. Them, Utah State, Georgia State, Nevada,
Yeah, you're
rough out
right. I
here in these
see. I
streets.
see that they went deep. But the thing with Washington State is they only have about 12 of those enrolled. The rest we'll see if the signing sticks because you can just ask out of your national letter of intent. You had that happen with a quarterback.
Well, that's what happened with Washington State's quarterback signing. He's at Wake Forest right now.
That's right, Steel Pizzella. And so
Yep.
here's another one. This will make you laugh. Uh, so one school I went to, and I'm obviously a fan of, and had spent time covering. Another school I didn't go to, but I grew up around there. My mom went there. I had uncles go there,
Okay, we're
and
talking about
so
Wyoming and Arizona
we're,
State.
we're talking about Wyoming and Arizona State. So there was a player out of the state of Texas who was committed to Wyoming. It's like it was like the scene from Happy Gilmore at the beginning when he's like, "Come on upstairs, baby," and she's like, "I don't want to. I'm done." And he's like, "Well, you're a lousy kindergarten teacher. I've seen the finger paintings you bring home, and they suck." And then 5 seconds later, he's like, "I'm sorry, baby."
Yep,
That's how I
exactly.
felt. I spent 2 weeks mad at this kid, and now here he is rolling up to Arizona State, and I'm like, "Oh, great signing,
Hope you didn't
great
tweet
signing."
anything
No
crazy.
devil.
Hope you didn't tweet anything crazy.
No, I did not.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about these class rankings. So, according to 247, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Auburn, Florida, Texas A&M, and LSU round out the top 10. And then over on 3, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas A&M, Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee. Now, there was one note that there was something that happened in this class that has never happened to the University of Oregon ever before. They finished with the highest average ranking of
Per
any
recruit.
team per
Yeah.
recruit. And they signed everybody that they signed except for one player was 4 star or 5 star. Never happened. So Dan Lanning is putting this roster in a position to where it is not good. It is special. Like you're gonna have Oregon with one of the highest blue chip rankings of any team in college football, which puts you in national championship contention. Because still, nobody with the blue chip ratio less than 50% has won a national championship since they've been calculating it. And now we have to look at, like the teams that are obviously recruiting well, but then have a chance to win a national championship, bro.
Yeah, I mean, the blue chip rating still matters. You have to hang on to this talent. Oregon finished with the highest average per recruit on Rivals with 4.11 stars per recruit. They are the only one in the country with a average recruit rating of above 4, which is crazy. And then what's even crazier is you look over at the other school that got 4 5 stars or above in Texas. And it depends on which recruiting ranking you use. But let's say that you use on 3. Texas has 4 of the top 23 players in the country coming in.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the type of stuff that I mean, if you can manage to, and it's probably got about a 50% hit rate of if you're graduating these kids or if you're going to have them for 3 years. And I'm pulling that statistic from the greatest recruiting class ever, which was what Texas A&M's 2021. Right? They retained about half those guys over a 3-year period.
Yeah.
So even assuming that, then if you're at the top of this list, if you're Georgia, you have to be feeling fantastic. If you're Oregon, you have to be feeling fantastic. If you're Texas, your baseline expectation at this point now that you've made 2 college football playoff in a row, is that you're not going back to what you were for the last 12 years you were in the Big 12,
Yes.
which was extraordinarily inconsistent. And then if you're Ohio State, you look at the rivals rankings and you have 22 players that are committed to your high school class that are 4-star and above. That means Rivals is saying that 22 of the guys that are coming in are NFL caliber.
That's a
I
little
think the
bit
biggest
surprising.
the biggest surprise for me was that Wisconsin, who is coming off a 3-6 record in the Big Ten. Luke Farrell's probably officially in hot seat territory.
Yeah.
Luke Farrell going into next season, I feel, is where Sam Pittman and Dave Aranda were heading into this year.
Yeah, it's a must
Is
win.
that fair? And so for Wisconsin to get 10 4-stars out of high school and only 3 of them being offensive linemen, because he was like, yeah, they got 10 4-stars. They're probably all on the O line. No,
Yeah.
they got a 4-star DB out of Ohio. They got a 4-star DB out of Chicago. They got a 4-star wide receiver out of Indiana. And they got a couple of really, really high-end defensive ends out of Florida and Illinois. That was
Louisville, Kansas, Vanderbilt. Like that's who they're around. It's not Tulane, Boise State, Washington State would be in the same situation as Oregon State. That's a Ralph, that's actually a very good point. Just the fact that they're able to hold on, that they're able to recruit on that level with no conference, no revenue plan
yeah.
is
And
is
and with Jonathan Smith at Michigan State, like they maintained their level despite
Michigan
everything
State
around them falling
on 3
apart.
is ranked 50th. 50th. And
That's not that
in
far ahead of Oregon State.
huh?
That's not
And
that far ahead of Oregon
56th on
State.
247.
There you go.
Now he's
So
a big
bravo.
time developer, but good lord.
But yeah, that's a bravo to Trent Bray, in my opinion. If we're looking for a deep cut of who, of who was a big winner when it came to high school recruits, um, Oregon State is setting themselves up to be the class of whatever this new conference is. And like you pointed out, they so Michigan State had 17 3-star recruits according to Rivals. Oregon State had 20.
Yeah.
What sets Michigan State apart is they did land a lone 5-star or a 4-star recruit, which they typically do every single year. They'll get a couple of guys who
Yeah.
are really high end. And this year that was Derek Simmons, defensive tackle. But other than that, if you flipped Michigan State and Oregon State's recruiting classes, there wouldn't be that much different as far as the ratings go.
Nope. And I want to point something out too, that teams that have good seasons, they typically don't see those results in the immediate recruiting class. It's usually the cycle after. Like for instance, Arizona State, they are 44 on 247, and then on 3 they're 48. So the result of this college football playoff appearance will be felt this upcoming year, provided that they continue the momentum. Like I would
Yeah.
expect
I
them
mean,
to be somewhere close to the top 25 for 2026, assuming that they start the year off well.
unless you're Boise State, then those days just never come.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Them days ain't coming.
Boise State's always doing the most with the least.
Hey, but they're going to the Pac-12, so they got a shot.
They're going to the Pac 12 getting 11 less 3-star recruits than Oregon State got this year.
Not good. All right, so before we change the subject, which of these teams in the top 25, right? Because you got obviously Penn State, Miami, USC, Missouri, South Carolina, Oklahoma. Ole Miss is much lower than they were last year. Much lower.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes to something that I was reading about where they talked about that there are schools that spent some of the 26 money, the 25 or 26 money this last year for the revenue sharing money that they borrowed forward, which I'm like, how can you do that? But that's a whole nother thing. So, which of these teams in the top 25? So, well, let's take the on three rankings, or the 247, or we can compare. Which one of these teams inside the top 25? Because somebody is going to underachieve. Who would you choose?
USC. USC.
Jeez. Okay, why? Because
Because
everybody, because you got Josh Pate, you got other people that are like they're so excited about everything that's going on about USC. Like he's hired a great defensive staff. I cannot argue with that. Hired a fantastic defensive staff. They still need a quarterback, like for somebody to step up as their true, leader quarterback guy. But about depth
yeah.
and everything else. So why do you and what does underachievement look like in your mind?
Well, the underachievement in my mind looks like not finishing around where your recruiting ranking was 3 years out.
Okay. That yeah, like so not finishing in the top 15 in the country.
Yes. So if on three's recruiting ranking for USC was 15 in 2025 and fifth in the Big Ten, do I think 3 years from now they're going to match that? And that's assuming there's no drastic changes or anything like that. I definitely do not. And one of the reasons is the makeup of this high school recruiting class for USC. They got about 11 kids that are considered future NFL draft picks out of the high school rankings, or that are borderline, because that's what these ratings are. 4-star are people that the recruiting services believe will be an NFL draft pick. 5-star is who the recruiting services believe will be a first round pick. So for USC, the only projected first round pick is Husan Longstreet, right?
Yes.
So at that one, you can say, all right, they got their man at quarterback, but getting their man at quarterback hasn't been enough for USC in the Lincoln
Yep.
Riley era because they always get their quarterback. Now, the issue is for me that only 4 of the rest of the 10 of those high level recruits came from the state of California. They're still not doing good
Mm,
or as well as they should be in the state of California. Now they got a guy that you're very familiar with to transfer back as a 4-star transfer recruit from San Jose State. So they have DJ Harvey, who went to
yep.
Sierra Canyon, I believe, with your son,
Yep.
who is a high level transfer at the cornerback position, and they got your guy Sam Heward to transfer in to play backup quarterback. But as far as the high school recruits, I'm not super impressed with how they're doing in the state of California. Therefore, I think they're going to severely underperform because the kids they get from out of state, they have a higher tendency to maybe go back home. So an Alex Gain out of
So
Georgia,
you so so
that's
so
one of their best
take the
recruits.
bag
But he
and
can go back.
take
Yeah.
take the bag and bounce because USC has up their NIL and up the entire like how much they're offering, everything else, and like they've made some offers that kids cannot say no to.
And those kids are from Virginia, Michigan, Baltimore,
Yeah.
uh, uh,
Mm.
outside Atlanta.
Gotta stay
Those
close to
kids
home,
might
buddy.
go home. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, the pick that I'm going to make, I'm gonna go with in the top 25. Oh man, let's go Missouri. Missouri inside of the top 16. I either want to
Okay.
go with. I was thinking Missouri, LSU. Actually, no. I'm gonna go with LSU because LSU's at 9, and I don't believe that they're gonna be at 9. So yeah,
That's a pretty good pick considering that what Brian Kelly has done with what he currently has to work with.
Yes.
And the 5 stars that he has, they aren't typically at positions where 5 stars typically work out. So DJ Pickett is a 5 star corner.
Yep.
Um, 5 star corners don't often translate. And evidence of that is Keely Ringo being a 5 star and ending up like a fourth rounder, Elias Ricks being a 5 star top 10 player in the country and ending up, marginal draft pick. So
Yeah.
DJ Pickett's going to have to fight through for that. And then one of their other 5 stars is a running back. How many 5 star running backs actually live up to that billing? And Harlem Berry, he's gonna have to find a way to stand out uh, immediately. I mean, this
Yeah.
is the number one player in all of Louisiana. They got him to play running back, and he's considered a future first round pick. Doesn't often work out that way. So I think you're kind of on the right track here.
All right. Next thing up on the College Football Apostles. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, get notifications, all of that, and share. Hop in them comments right now. We'll give you a second before we get to talking about Jalen Milroe. So Jalen Milroe. People have asked him about changing to the running back position, and he was like, "You don't ask a zebra to be a what?" His
You
exact
don't.
quote was like, "You don't ask a zebra to be something else." I
He said,
100%.
"You don't ask. You don't ask a zebra to be a dog."
Yes. I 100% stand by, up for, and with Jalen Milroe about what he said. There are so many times, and now this is going to be a shit sandwich, where all those things about Jalen Milroe, I 100% agree with him. I applaud him for standing on business. Because sometimes coaches don't know how to deal with the athleticism or what they're taught and all of this stuff and figure it out and all of that. And if you're a quarterback, you're a quarterback. If it doesn't work out, then you can change positions. But at the same time, if anybody drafts Jalen Milroe with a first round pick, be prepared to get your pink slip. I believe the kid is a phenomenal athlete. He seems like a cool kid. I don't know him. Seems like he might be, like a good person. However, good people don't make great football players all the time. And I do not believe that he has the requisite tools that he needs more development and refinement to be a good NFL quarterback. This feels like if somebody grabs him in the first round because somebody told him that and he needed another year of college football. But if he gets drafted in the first round, this feels like it'll just be a money pit like the Anthony Richardson money pit that the Colts are a part of right now.
Now, Anthony Richardson is going to make more money as a first round quarterback than he would as probably a star running back or semi star running back
Yes.
or tight end
Yes.
in his career. So,
Yes.
like, there's still more as a backup quarterback than a starting running back.
Yeah, but that's the point though, Ralph, is that you got to get drafted in the first round though. And there's no guarantee that that's going to happen.
Regardless, he's not another position, right? He says Bill O'Brien told him he wasn't a quarterback. Well, he went on to be a pretty successful quarterback at Alabama. And at the NFL level, he's got a good deep ball. He's extremely athletic. He could get away with it for a while, probably, but he's got the smallest hands of any quarterback in the NFL.
Ever.
Yeah, ever.
No,
ever. And
not
we,
ever, but damn near.
yeah. And I mean, I think about Dante Culpepper a little bit, that it does cause problems.
Yes.
You could be a fumbler, but at the same time, like, again, with the way that Anthony Richardson gets away with it, he could too, which I think would be enough for people to keep him around as a backup quarterback. You're going to make more money at that position than any starting position that you would play regardless. I do feel bad that he has to answer questions like this, but also for him, I do feel that we've probably moved beyond the racism of it,
Yes.
and people are just talking about the fact that this is a freakish athlete at the quarterback
Yes,
position.
he's a freakish athlete who didn't throw the ball very well this last year. I mean, it's fair. It's fair. I mean,
He got a good
it's
deep
like
ball though.
it's like Riley Leonard. Yes, he should be thinking about potentially playing tight end, maybe. I'm just saying. Um,
And it happens. Your guy Matt Jones, Felipe Franks, like people
yep,
do make that. Logan Thomas,
yep,
people do make that transition.
for sure. Speaking of transition, though, Ron Rivera. Oh, he's gotten the Bill Belichick bug. He's like, oh, I'm going back to college. Bill's made it cool to go back to college. I'm gonna go help Justin Wilcox over at Cal. I like this move because Justin Wilcox needs some help, and Ron Rivera now he can sell even more. Even though Justin Wilcox put a lot of defensive players in the NFL, he can sell. Listen, here are the things that I know. Here are the things that work, and maybe he can help him get an offense together. They tried this last year, which the irony where their offense was much better and their defense wasn't quite as good, which was ironic. So in the ACC, can Ron Rivera help him when they're playing against Bill Belichick?
Yes, yes.
This
This
is
is
wrong on some level, though, but okay. Like Bill Belichick and Ron Rivera in college football. Nobody
when
had that
all
on
we
their
talked
radar.
about how was nobody wanted to work in college football anymore, and now we got all these pro coaches dropping down to. It's funny how that works. It's funny how
Yep.
that works. I would be
Because
worried.
remember, the talking point was all the coaches are gonna leave, and I was like, so what? If they don't want to be here, sayonara. There will be plenty of coaches who want these jobs, guaranteed, and good ones. You don't have to worry about chasing after if Ryan Day is like, oh, I'm sick of being in college, I want to go. Okay, peace out. Do you think Ohio State is going to have any trouble finding stealing somebody else's head coach? No. And then wherever that coach comes from, do you think that if he leaves Miami, do you think Miami's going to have trouble finding a coach? No. And then the coach that replaces Miami from Memphis, do you think Memphis is going to have trouble finding a head coach? No. So don't worry about them talking about they leaving. So what? Sayonara.
Yeah, if I'm Justin Wilcox, like, yes, I do think that it will be helpful. I think I watched this with Arizona State and Marvin Lewis. I think that it'll be incredibly helpful. Now, if I'm if I'm Justin Wilcox, I do worry a little bit that Cal fans would be happier going 6-7 with Ron Rivera than they would going 6-7 with Justin Wilcox as head
Because it's
coach.
been so many 6-7s.
There's been quite a few that George this year, if they don't have a winning record in the ACC, will be their 15th straight year with a losing record in conference.
Damn.
So
So are
I
you
see
actually
Ron
headed
Rivera to
in the right
Cal.
direction? Are you actually
No,
headed in the right direction?
no, Fernando Mendoza just left. You're definitely not headed in the right direction. Now they get Jaden Ott back, which is cool, but I, my worry is that Ron Rivera is from Cal Berkeley. Ron
Oh my
Rivera is
God,
not.
that he's gonna get oh my God, that he's gonna pull a Doc Rivers with Alvin Gentry.
Yes,
I didn't mean Alvin Gentry. When he was basically a consultant with the Bucks, and then they just fired the Bucks coach.
that's what I'm saying because Ron Rivera is not done coaching. He interviewed for NFL jobs this year.
Yes.
He's not done, and he is a Cal Golden Bear. And Justin Wilcox has never once had a winning record in
Mm.
conference. And eventually, the Cal fans who are very passionate are going to get sick of that.
They went
So
2-6 in conference this year. Lord have mercy. That's not good. That's not good, Ralph. I'm just gonna tell you that.
he's had 2 conference wins or less 4 times. One of those is the COVID year, but still they weren't good.
Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. All right. Next thing up, the SEC, Ralph. You were talking about this. The SEC is trying to make their path to the college football playoff a little bit easier.
Yes, they want. They want. They had a meeting. The Big Ten was involved, and that's it because they don't think anybody else matters anyway. And what they want is they want more SEC teams. They want to reseed. They want to get rid of the conference champion guaranteed bye. They just want things that are going to make life on the
Yeah.
SEC easier.
They want
Which
4 guaranteed spots, which
e-
this year proved they should not have 4 guaranteed spots. Nobody should have 4 guaranteed spots. I'm thankful that this year played out the way it did because nobody should have guaranteed spots. Throw that mess in the trash outside of conference champions. Now I do, on the other hand, subscribe to the
if
theory.
you get in,
Well,
no, if you get in on a guarantee, you're getting made fun of.
oh yes, yes, yes. That is charity case, not work for what you got, all of that. But I do
And if
agree
they
with
had 4 guarantees, they still would have complained this year
oh for
because
sure. They'd be
my
like,
guess,
oh well, it should have been 5 in.
yeah, because if it's then you would have either you still would have left either South Carolina or Ole Miss out.
Yep,
And the fans wanted South Carolina, and the one person who's loud wanted Ole Miss.
yep. So I would say that the reseeding crucial. That the automatic berths, I'm 100% in on. But that the top 4 teams in the rankings should get the buys. And yeah, that wherever you're ranked, that's where you should be seated. But with the guarantees. So if it's 12 teams and then number 16, 17, 18, and 19 are the guarantee are the top 5 champion are the power are the conference champions, then they should be number 9, 10, 11, and 12.
But why do people even care what happens with the buys when it's now been proven that they weren't necessarily good for you?
Ralph, see, the only reason why I think that matters is because then it keeps what people complained about Oregon having to play Ohio State in the first round. So you actually then get a chance to play more competitive games in the first round. And then the teams that were your better teams should end up playing easier games in the second round of the playoffs, even though I don't think that there should be buys to begin with, just either 8 teams or 16 teams.
I agree with you. There is a quite a movement for a 14 with only the top two, and the top two are going to be your SEC, your top ranked SEC and your top ranked Big
Big
Ten
Ten.
every year. But I'm afraid is every concession that we give is going to get closer and closer to people just saying we don't want conference championships anymore at all. Because what the SEC is going to run into is they're going to have their second best team win a conference championship and get a bye, and then the best team is going to find a way to complain.
Mm, yep. Nah, you are 100% right about that because they will not be happy at all until it's a Big Ten SEC only invitational. And that's why I'm actually rooting for the Big Ten and the ACC and the group of 5 schools to keep winning games in the playoff.
If I'm
That's what
in
I
the
want.
ACC or the Big 12, I will concede 8 guaranteed spots for the big two conferences. If they concede, that's all they get.
Oh,
I
that they
will
can
hand
never
that
have
to them.
more.
Yeah, I will hand that to them on a silver platter if they then turn around and say, all right, well, then only 4 get in. I'll guarantee 4, but you only get 4.
Ooh. And especially at 16, that get real funky, buddy. Real funky.
Because it's going to work out in your favor to get a third ACC or a third Big 12
Yes,
team in over a fifth SEC team.
that's
So,
right.
yeah, I would concede to that. I would concede that as long as they start. So then it's only 4 from both.
I like that. You on to something. But you guys, though, that is college football apostles for this week. Make sure that you like, subscribe, get notifications, and tell a friend. Peace out. We will catch you guys later.